The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mixture of translated languages, creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that had become as familiar as breathing to Ambassador Sarah Chen. She sat perfectly still in the human delegation's assigned section, her dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives of 47 different species. Each delegation occupied their species-specific environmental pods, creating a rainbow of colored atmospheres and lighting conditions throughout the massive crystalline chamber. Sarah had been Earth's primary representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years now, ever since humanity had been granted provisional membership status. Provisional. The word still left a bitter taste in her mouth. While every other species in the galaxy had been accepted as full members upon first contact, humans remained in a probationary period that seemed to stretch endlessly forward. The reason was simple, and it was about to be discussed again today. High Counselor Vex High, a towering insectoid being whose chitinous exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, called the session to order with a resonant click that echoed through the translation systems. We convene today to address the ongoing question of human classification and full membership status. Sarah's aide, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, leaned closer to whisper, "Here we go again." His weathered face, marked by years of military service, showed the same frustration that Sarah felt. Marcus had been her military advisor since her appointment, and his practical experience often provided crucial insights during these diplomatic sessions. Counselor Zephys of the Centauri Federation rose first, her ethereal blue form shimmering as she spoke. "Esteemed colleagues, we have debated this matter for standard cycles now. The humans present an interesting case, but we must consider the fundamental question that continues to plague their application." Sarah knew what was coming. It was always the same argument. "The human species," Zephys continued, "claims to be the dominant species of their world, yet their physiology suggests otherwise. They possess no natural armor, no venomous capabilities, no enhanced sensory organs, and no inherent weapons systems. Their muscle density is average at best, their reaction times are modest, and their technological advancement, while admirable, followed a surprisingly gradual progression." Murmurs of agreement rippled through several delegations. Sarah watched as the Korthak representative, a heavily armored reptilian species, nodded his massive head. The Ethereal Collective's ambassador, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed in what Sarah had learned to recognize as concurrence. "Furthermore," Zephys added, "their homeworld, which they call Earth, harbors numerous species that appear more suited to apex predator status. We have reviewed their biological databases. Creatures they call tigers, bears, sharks, and eagles all demonstrate superior hunting adaptations. How can we classify humans as the dominant species when such formidable competitors exist on their own world?" High Counselor Vexa High's compound eyes turned toward the human delegation. "Ambassador Chen, you have heard these concerns raised previously. What response do you offer?" Sarah stood smoothly, her simple black diplomatic attire a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments and natural displays of the other species. She had learned that human simplicity often made other species underestimate them further, but today she was going to use that to her advantage. "Honored Counselor, esteemed representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I appreciate the concerns raised by Counselor Zephys. However, I believe there is a fundamental misunderstanding about what makes an apex predator." She activated her personal holographic display, showing images of Earth's biosphere. "Yes, Earth hosts many powerful predatory species, but apex predator status is not determined solely by physical attributes like claws, fangs, or armor. It is determined by a species' ability to dominate their environment and compete successfully for resources." The image shifted to show human settlements across Earth's continents. Humans currently number over 8 billion individuals and have established permanent settlements on every continent of our world, including the polar regions where temperatures regularly drop below -40 degrees. We have domesticated hundreds of species, eliminated diseases that once decimated our populations, and established complex supply chains that span our entire planet. Counselor Threeks of the militant hegemony, a warrior species known for their aggressive territorial expansion, interjected with a series of sharp barks that translated as laughter. Ambassador Chen, these accomplishments speak to intelligence and cooperation, not predatory dominance. Any species can gather in large numbers and build shelters. Sarah nodded respectfully. A fair point, Counselor Threeks. However, I would argue that you are thinking too narrowly about predation. When humans hunt, we do not rely solely on our physical attributes because we do not need to. She changed the holographic display to show ancient human hunting scenes. Our ancestors hunted creatures many times their size and strength through persistence, strategy, and tool use. They would track prey for days across vast distances, wearing down even the fastest animals through endurance hunting. They developed weapons that could kill from far beyond the range of any natural predator. The chamber grew quieter as delegates paid closer attention to the images. But perhaps more importantly, Sarah continued, humans excel at the most crucial aspect of apex predation, eliminating competition. The display shifted to show population data. In the last 1,000 years of human civilization, the populations of large predators on Earth have declined by over 90%. This was not accidental. It was the result of systematic competition for territory and resources. Counselor Vexahai leaned forward slightly. You speak of historical data, Ambassador, but the Council requires practical demonstration. How can we verify that humans truly possess apex predator capabilities in a contemporary context? Sarah had been hoping for exactly this question. She and Marcus had spent months preparing for this moment. High Counselor, I propose a formal assessment. Select any challenge you deem appropriate to test apex predator capabilities. Human volunteers will demonstrate our species' hunting and survival abilities under whatever conditions the Council considers suitable for evaluation. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated discussions. Several delegations seemed intrigued by the proposition, while others appeared skeptical or concerned. Counselor Zephys spoke over the noise. Ambassador Chen, are you suggesting that humans would participate in an actual predatory challenge? Not a simulation or theoretical exercise, but a real demonstration? That is exactly what I am suggesting, Sarah replied firmly. Humans are confident in our abilities. We are willing to prove our apex predator status through practical demonstration rather than continued debate. High Counselor Vexahai raised one of his primary appendages, calling for silence. This is a significant development. The Council has never before conducted such an assessment for membership determination. We would need to establish parameters, safety protocols, and evaluation criteria. Counselor Threeks's barking laughter returned. I find this proposal amusing. Very well, humans. If you wish to demonstrate your predatory prowess, I suggest we arrange a suitable challenge. My species maintains several hunting preserves on worlds specifically designed for testing combat and survival capabilities. Sarah felt Marcus tense beside her, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. We accept whatever challenge the Council deems appropriate, provided it is fair and allows humans to demonstrate our natural capabilities. Then let me propose the following, Threeks continued, clearly enjoying the situation. The hegemony maintains a preserve on Korath Prime. It contains a diverse ecosystem with multiple apex predator species from across the galaxy. The environment includes varied terrain, from dense forests to open plains to mountainous regions. Prey animals range from small, fast species to large, dangerous herbivores that regularly kill inexperienced hunters. The counselors display activated showing aerial footage of a vast wilderness area. Sarah could see thick forests giving way to grasslands, with rivers cutting through rocky canyon systems. The scale was impressive, easily hundreds of square kilometers of untamed wilderness. The standard challenge involves surviving in this environment for one planetary rotation cycle, approximately 30 Earth standard hours, while successfully hunting and securing protein resources. Participants may use only tools and equipment they can create from materials found within the preserve. Sarah noticed several delegations leaning forward with interest. This was clearly a well-known test among the more militant species. However, Threeks continued with obvious satisfaction, to make this a proper test of apex predator status, I propose we add an additional element. The preserve currently hosts a pack of shadow maws, apex predators from my own homeworld. They are intelligent, pack-hunting carnivores with natural stealth capabilities, enhanced senses, and razor-sharp claws capable of cutting through most biological armor. The chamber fell silent. Sarah could feel the weight of attention from every delegation. Marcus leaned closer and whispered urgently, "Sarah, shadow maws are known throughout this sector. They're basically invisible until they attack, and they're smart enough to use coordinated tactics. Most military forces consider them one of the most dangerous non-sentient species in the galaxy." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her mind was racing. This was clearly intended to be an impossible challenge. Threeks was calling what he assumed was humanity's bluff, expecting her to back down from such obviously dangerous conditions. Instead, she stood straighter. "Counselor Threeks, are you saying that if human volunteers can survive in this environment, successfully hunt for sustenance, and coexist with or overcome the Shadow Maw Pack, the Council will accept this as proof of our apex predator status?" "If humans can accomplish all of that," Threeks replied with apparent amusement, "I will personally sponsor their immediate elevation to full Council membership." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Sponsorship from a current member, especially a militant species like the hegemony, carried significant political weight. High Counselor Vexhai looked around the chamber. "This proposal requires full council consideration. Are there any objections to establishing this as the formal assessment for human apex predator status?" Sarah watched as delegation after delegation registered their agreement. Even species that had previously shown little interest in human membership seemed intrigued by the prospect of witnessing such a dramatic challenge. "The proposal is accepted," Vexhai announced. "Ambassador Chen, how many volunteers would humanity provide for this assessment?" Sarah had discussed this possibility extensively with Earth's leadership. The human delegation will provide 3 volunteers. This will allow for demonstration of both individual capabilities and small group coordination, which is typical of human hunting behavior. 3 volunteers against a pack of shadow maws in an unknown environment, Counselor Zephys observed. "Are you certain about this decision, Ambassador?" "Completely certain," Sarah replied. "When do we begin?" Threeks' amusement was evident in his body language. "The next transport to Korath Prime departs in 2 standard cycles. Will your volunteers be ready?" Sarah nodded. "They will be ready." As the session concluded and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Marcus remained close to Sarah's side. "You know this is insane, right? We're essentially agreeing to send 3 people into a death trap to prove a point." Sarah gathered her materials calmly. "Marcus, do you remember the briefings we received about military capabilities when I first took this position?" "Of course." "Special Operations Command gave us detailed overviews of human tactical advantages for potential diplomatic scenarios. And what did they emphasize as humanity's greatest military asset?" Marcus paused, then understanding dawned in his eyes. They said our greatest advantage was that other species consistently underestimate us because they don't understand how we fight. Exactly. Counselor Threeks just made the same mistake that human enemies have been making for thousands of years. He's assuming we'll fight like he would fight. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah's communication device chimed with an incoming priority message from Earth. She glanced at the sender identification and smiled. "Who is it?" Marcus asked. "General Harrison from Special Operations Command. It seems they've been monitoring our diplomatic channels." She opened the message and read the first line aloud. "Ambassador Chen, we have volunteers ready for immediate deployment. How soon can we make some aliens very, very sorry they asked for a demonstration?" Marcus shook his head with a mixture of concern and admiration. 3 volunteers against an unknown number of invisible alien apex predators in their own environment. What could possibly go wrong? Sarah's smile widened as they entered the transport corridor. "That's exactly what I'm counting on them thinking." Behind them, the Galactic Council chamber emptied as representatives returned to their delegations to report on the day's unprecedented developments. None of them had any idea that they had just witnessed the opening move in what would become the most talked-about demonstration in Council history. In 48 hours, 3 humans would step onto the surface of Korath Prime and begin to redefine how the galaxy understood the concept of apex predation. The aliens had wanted proof that humans were apex predators. They were about to get far more than they bargained for. The transport shuttle descended through Korath Prime's atmosphere with mechanical precision, its alien design completely unfamiliar to the 3 humans strapped into the passenger compartment. Through the viewports, they could see the hunting preserve spread out below them, thousands of square kilometers of wilderness that looked deceptively peaceful from altitude. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez checked her equipment one final time, though she had already performed the same inspection twice during the journey. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her brown eyes held the kind of steady focus that came from years of experience in hostile environments. As a survival instructor for the Army's Elite Ranger training program, she had volunteered immediately when the call went out for this mission. Beside her, Chief Petty Officer David Kim methodically reviewed the terrain maps they had been provided. A Navy SEAL with specialization in reconnaissance and tracking, his Korean-American features remained calm despite the obvious dangers ahead. He had spent the entire journey memorizing topographical details and water source locations, building mental maps that would be crucial for their survival. The third team member, Captain Maria Santos of the Air Force Pararescue Corps, was running through medical supply inventories. Her mixed Hispanic heritage showed in her olive complexion and sharp cheekbones, and her medical background had made her an obvious choice for a mission where injury was not just possible, but probable. She had seen combat in the most dangerous rescue operations on Earth, but nothing quite like this. "Insertion in 5 minutes," announced the pilot in heavily accented English. The translator systems had been removed to ensure the humans would have no technological assistance during their trial. Elena looked through the viewport at the observation platforms being constructed around the preserve's perimeter. Word of the human challenge had spread quickly through the galactic community, and dozens of species had sent representatives to witness the demonstration. She could see the distinctive environmental domes and viewing structures of at least 20 different alien civilizations. "Popular event?" David observed, following her gaze. "Good," Elena replied. "Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The shuttle touched down in a cleared area at the edge of the preserve. As the doors opened, the 3 humans were greeted by a delegation of hegemony officials led by Counselor Threeks himself. The massive reptilian warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scales reflecting the orange light of the system's twin suns. "Humans," Threeks rumbled through his translator device, "you have arrived at your testing ground. Are you prepared to demonstrate your species' supposed apex predator capabilities? Elena stepped forward as the designated team leader. We are ready, Counselor. Then allow me to explain the specific parameters of your challenge, Threeks continued, clearly enjoying the moment. You will be transported to an insertion point within the preserve. From that moment, you have 30 standard hours to survive, procure sustenance through hunting, and deal with any predatory threats you encounter. You may use only materials found within the preserve, no outside technology or equipment. He gestured toward the wilderness beyond the landing zone. The preserve hosts numerous species. Prey animals include Korath gazelles, forest swine, and river fish. However, you will not be alone. A pack of 7 shadow maws currently hunts in the central sector. They are the apex predators of this environment, and they do not typically share territory with competing species. David studied the tree line where they would be inserted. He could already identify several potential advantages in the terrain: dense canopy cover, what appeared to be a stream system, and varied elevation that could provide tactical options. Any questions before insertion? Threeks asked. Just one, Elena replied. When we succeed in this challenge, will the Council honor its commitment to grant humanity full membership? Several of the hegemony officials made sounds that the humans assumed were laughter. If you succeed, human. If. The insertion transport was a simple hover platform that carried them 3 kilometers into the preserve before depositing them in a small clearing surrounded by dense forest. As the platform departed, the 3 humans found themselves alone in an alien wilderness for the first time. The silence that followed was broken only by the sounds of unfamiliar wildlife and the whisper of wind through alien vegetation. The trees were taller than earth conifers, but with a similar needle-like foliage that created a thick canopy overhead. The undergrowth was dense but navigable, and Elena could already identify several plant species that might prove useful. First priority is reconnaissance and shelter, she announced quietly, automatically falling into mission protocols. David, I want you to do a perimeter sweep. Identify water sources, game trails, and potential threats. Maria, help me assess what we have to work with for tools and materials. David nodded and moved into the forest with barely a sound. His SEAL training had included extensive work in unfamiliar environments, and he quickly began identifying the subtle signs that revealed the character of this ecosystem. Within minutes, he had located a stream approximately 200 meters to the north, identified what appeared to be well-used game trails leading toward a natural clearing, and discovered something that made him freeze in place. In the soft soil near a fallen log, he found a paw print unlike anything in Earth's fossil record. It was roughly the size of a large wolf's print, but the claw marks extended nearly 3 centimeters beyond the pad marks. More disturbing was the partial second print overlapping the first. This creature had retractable claws that left even deeper gouges when fully extended. Shadow Maw. David carefully photographed the print with his memory, noting the depth and spacing that would indicate the creature's size and gait. This particular individual was large, probably over 2 meters long, and the freshness of the print suggested it had passed through within the last few hours. He returned to find Elena and Maria had made remarkable progress in a very short time. Elena had identified several useful plant species, including what appeared to be a fibrous vine suitable for rope making and a hardwood tree that would provide excellent material for tool construction. Maria had located a natural rock formation that would serve as both shelter foundation and tool-making workshop. The overhang provided protection from the elements while offering multiple escape routes if they needed to leave quickly. Shadow Maw track, approximately 4 hours old, heading southwest, David reported quietly. Elena nodded without surprise. Expected. What else? Good water source to the north. Multiple game trails converging on a natural clearing about 800 meters east. And, David paused, human-favorable terrain for tactical positioning if we need to make a stand. Explain. The stream cuts through a narrow ravine with good sight lines and limited approach vectors. If we establish a position there, we can control the engagement parameters. Elena smiled. Perfect. But first, we need to demonstrate human hunting capabilities for our audience. She pointed toward the canopy, where they could occasionally catch glimpses of observation platforms. They're watching everything. Over the next several hours, the three humans began to demonstrate capabilities that their alien observers had not anticipated. Elena crafted tools with an efficiency that seemed almost supernatural to species that relied primarily on manufactured equipment. Using stones as hammers and sharp rocks as cutting implements, she rapidly produced spear points, arrowheads, and cutting tools. Maria gathered medicinal plants while simultaneously identifying edible species and potential toxins. Her medical training included extensive field botany, and she was able to safely sample local vegetation to determine what could supplement their diet. David, meanwhile, had begun tracking local game with systematic precision. He identified the movement patterns of the Karath gazelles, located their watering spots, and determined the optimal hunting positions for the tools Elena was crafting. By the 6th hour, they had established a sophisticated base camp that included shelter, fresh water access, food storage, and an impressive array of improvised tools and weapons. More importantly, they had already successfully hunted and processed 2 small game animals, demonstrating effective procurement of protein resources. The alien observers in their viewing platforms were beginning to take notice. Counselor Zephys of the Centauri Federation leaned forward in her environmental suit, studying the humans' activities through high-powered observation equipment. Curious, she noted to her aide. Their tool creation capabilities exceed our initial projections. In another platform, a representative of the Aquatic Collective was documenting the humans' hunting success. They appear to have established sustainable food procurement within a single planetary cycle. Most species require several cycles to adapt to a new environment. But it was Counselor Threeks who was watching most intently. His initial amusement had been replaced by growing attention as the humans demonstrated one capability after another. They work with remarkable efficiency, he admitted to his military advisor. And their tool creation speed suggests extensive practice with improvised equipment. Sir, his advisor replied, our scouts report that the Shadowmaw Pack has detected the humans' presence. They are currently circling the human position, approximately 2 kilometers out. Threeks' interest sharpened. Begin recording everything. When the Shadowmaws attack, I want full documentation of how these humans respond. Below in the preserve, Elena had noticed signs that they were being stalked. Subtle disturbances in the forest, the sudden silence of local wildlife in certain directions, and David's reconnaissance reports all pointed to the same conclusion. They're out there, she told her teammates as they finished their evening meal of roasted game and edible plants. David's counted at least 5 distinct tracking patterns. They're staying out of visual range but closing the perimeter. Maria checked her improvised medical kit. How long before contact? Soon, David replied. They're coordinating their approach. I count 7 individuals minimum, probably the full pack. They've been observing us for the last 2 hours, learning our patterns. Elena stood and walked to the edge of their camp, looking out into the darkening forest. Above them, the alien observation platforms had activated night vision equipment, their lights creating an eerie glow in the canopy. Time to show our audience what human apex predators really look like, she said quietly. In the growing darkness, 7 pairs of eyes reflected the last rays of the alien suns as the Shadowmaw Pack began their final approach. Each creature moved with perfect silence, their natural camouflage making them nearly invisible even to their own kind. They had hunted in this preserve for cycles, dominating every species introduced as potential competition. They had never encountered creatures like these humans, but their instincts told them these new animals were potential rivals for territory and resources. The Shadow Maws had no way of knowing that they were about to face the deadliest hunters their galaxy had ever produced. Elena hefted the spear she had crafted that afternoon, testing its balance one final time. "Positions," she ordered quietly. The three humans moved with practiced precision to predetermined locations around their camp. They had been preparing for this moment since their insertion, and now their planning would be put to the ultimate test. In the observation platforms above, dozens of alien species held their collective breath as the most dangerous predators in the preserve closed in on what they assumed would be easy prey. The aliens had wanted proof that humans were apex predators. They were about to witness a demonstration that would fundamentally change how the galaxy viewed Earth's dominant species. The attack came at precisely Arrow 247 local time, just as Elena had predicted. The first Shadow Maw emerged from the darkness like liquid death, its naturally camouflaged hide making it nearly invisible until it was less than 10 meters from the human camp. Its retractable claws extended to full length as it prepared to pounce on what it assumed was sleeping prey. Instead, it found itself impaled through the chest by a wooden spear that had been positioned at exactly the right angle and height to catch a leaping predator. Elena had calculated the approach vector and strike zone based on the creature's tracks, and her trap worked with deadly precision. The Shadow Maw's death cry alerted the rest of the pack, but instead of retreating, they pressed their attack with the coordinated fury of apex predators who had never encountered effective resistance. They discovered that humans had been preparing for coordinated pack attacks for thousands of years. David had positioned himself in the stream ravine, where the narrow approach limited the number of attackers who could reach him simultaneously. When the second and third Shadow Maws attempted to flank the camp from the north, they found themselves funneled into a killing zone where superior numbers became a disadvantage rather than an asset. The Seal's improvised spear took the lead creature through the throat with a thrust that utilized leverage and positioning rather than raw strength. The second Shadow Maw's leap carried it directly into a series of sharpened stakes that David had embedded in the ravine wall at chest height for any creature of that size. Maria, meanwhile, had taken the high ground on the rocky overhang above their shelter. When two more Shadow Maws attempted to attack from above, they discovered that humans were one of the few species in the galaxy that habitually looked up when planning defensive positions. Her medical training had included extensive anatomy study, and she placed her spear thrust with surgical precision, severing the spinal column of the first attacker. The second creature's momentum carried it past her position, but directly into Elena's secondary trap, a carefully weighted deadfall that had been triggered by the creature's own movement. In less than 3 minutes, 5 of the 7 Shadow Maws were dead. The remaining 2 predators found themselves in a situation their evolutionary programming had never prepared them for. They were being hunted. Elena emerged from her concealed position, her spear bloodied but her expression calm and focused. David appeared at the ravine's edge, already moving to flank the surviving creatures. Maria descended from her perch with the controlled grace of a practiced combatant. The 2 surviving Shadow Maws backed away, their natural camouflage flickering with stress patterns that indicated extreme agitation. They had never encountered prey that fought back with such calculated efficiency. But the humans were not finished. "Standard pursuit protocol," Elena announced quietly, and her teammates nodded in understanding. What followed was a demonstration of persistence hunting that left the alien observers in stunned silence. The humans did not attempt to close with the remaining Shadow Maws directly. Instead, they began to track them with methodical patience, maintaining just enough pressure to keep the creatures moving without giving them time to rest or regroup. For the next 4 hours, 3 humans pursued 2 of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy across terrain that favored the Shadow Maw's natural advantages. The aliens had better night vision, superior agility, and intimate knowledge of the preserve's geography. None of that mattered. David's tracking skills allowed the humans to follow their prey across any terrain, while Elena's tactical planning ensured they always controlled the engagement parameters. Maria's medical knowledge let her read the signs of exhaustion and stress in their quarry, providing crucial timing for the final phase of the hunt. The Shadow Maws tried every escape tactic in their considerable repertoire. They used their camouflage to hide in dense undergrowth, only to be flushed out by humans who could track them by scent and sign rather than sight. They attempted to confuse their pursuers by splitting up, but the humans simply divided their own tracking efforts and maintained contact with both targets. Most disturbing of all, from the Shadow Maw's perspective, was that the humans seemed to anticipate their moves before they made them. "Left flanker is showing respiratory distress," Maria reported as they crested a ridge overlooking a valley where one of the creatures had sought shelter. "Stress indicators suggest exhaustion syndrome setting in. Primary target is favoring the right rear limb," David added from his scouting position. "Probably strained during the initial engagement. Range of movement is decreasing." Elena studied the terrain ahead, already planning their final approach. "They're going to make a stand at the stream junction. Classic desperate predator behavior. Find defensible terrain and hope the threat goes away." In the observation platforms above, the alien witnesses were struggling to process what they were seeing. This was not how predatory encounters were supposed to work. Apex predators were supposed to overwhelm their targets with superior physical capabilities, not systematically exhaust them through strategic planning and endurance. Counselor Vexahai turned to his scientific advisor, a being whose species had spent millennia studying predatory behavior across the galaxy. "Analyst Carex, explain what we are observing." Carex's tentacles writhed with confusion as he reviewed the data streams from the preserve. "High Counselor, the humans appear to be demonstrating persistence predation techniques that we have never observed in sentient species. They are using tactical coordination, environmental awareness, and psychological pressure to systematically break down creatures that are physically superior to them in every measurable way." "You are saying they are out-hunting the Shadow Maws?" "I am saying they are demonstrating why they became the dominant species on a world with physically superior predators. They do not need to be stronger or faster if they can be smarter and more persistent." On another platform, Counselor Threeks was having a similar conversation with his military advisors. The hegemony prided itself on understanding warfare and predation, but what they were witnessing challenged their fundamental assumptions. "Sir," his tactical analyst reported, "the humans have successfully eliminated 5 Shadow Maws and are currently pursuing the survivors across terrain that should favor the native predators. Their casualty rate is 0. "How is that possible? Shadow Maws are apex predators. They have natural advantages in this environment." "Sir, I believe the humans are demonstrating that apex predator status is not determined by individual physical capabilities, but by species-level tactical adaptability. They are using tools, environmental knowledge, and coordinated strategy to overcome natural disadvantages." Below in the preserve, the final confrontation was approaching. The 2 surviving Shadow Maws had indeed taken position at the stream junction, using the water at their backs and elevated ground to their front in what should have been an ideal defensive position. They had chosen well tactically, but they were facing opponents who had been perfecting siege warfare for millennia. Elena surveyed the Shadow Maw's position from concealment, noting the advantages and vulnerabilities of their chosen ground. "They're learning," she said with professional appreciation. "That's actually good terrain usage." "Too bad for them that humans invented siege tactics," David replied, already identifying approach routes that would negate the high ground advantage. Maria was preparing specialized equipment, not weapons, but tools that would demonstrate another crucial human capability. "Non-lethal takedown?" Elena nodded. "Time to show our audience something really impressive." What followed was a masterclass in tactical flexibility that left the alien observers completely speechless. Instead of pressing their attack, the humans began to systematically eliminate the Shadow Maw's advantages without directly engaging them. They diverted the stream that protected the creature's rear flank, using improvised tools and engineering knowledge to redirect the water flow. They created smoke using controlled fires that masked their movements, while forcing the Shadow Maws to relocate to less favorable ground. Most importantly, they demonstrated the psychological warfare techniques that had made humans the most feared opponents in any conflict across their planet's history. Stress indicators are approaching critical levels, Maria reported as she observed the Shadow Maw's behavior. They're experiencing learned helplessness syndrome. Their fight-or-flight responses are breaking down. Elena had seen the same pattern in hostile forces during her military career. Time to end this. The final capture was almost anticlimactic. Two exhausted, psychologically overwhelmed Shadow Maws found themselves surrounded by humans who had spent hours demonstrating that resistance was futile. When Elena stepped into their view with her hands empty and her posture non-threatening, they simply collapsed in submission. The humans had not just defeated the apex predators of the preserve, they had dominated them so completely that the creatures surrendered without a final fight. In the observation platforms, the silence stretched for long moments as alien representatives struggled to process what they had witnessed. These humans had not simply survived their trial or even succeeded in their hunting requirements. They had completely redefined what apex predation meant. Counselor Threeks was the first to break the silence. His earlier amusement had been replaced by something approaching awe. Analyst, what is the current status of the Shadow Maw pack? Sir, 5 creatures are confirmed dead, eliminated through tactical engagement rather than direct physical confrontation. 2 survivors are alive and, sir, they appear to have been captured rather than killed. Captured? The humans appear to have psychologically dominated them to the point of surrender. We have never observed this behavior pattern in Shadow Maw encounters with other species. Threeks studied the feeds from the preserve, watching as Elena approached the surrendered predators with calm confidence. They broke them psychologically. Yes, sir. And they did it systematically, using tactics that suggest this is standard procedure for their species when dealing with competitive predators. On the forest floor below, Elena was demonstrating the final aspect of human apex predator behavior. She approached the captured Shadow Maws slowly, showing no fear or aggression. When she extended her hand toward the larger of the 2 creatures, it submissively allowed her to make contact. Apex predator status confirmed, she said quietly, knowing that every word was being recorded by the observation platforms above. Dominant species established through tactical superiority, psychological control, and successful resource competition. She looked up toward the alien observers, her expression calm and professional. The demonstration is complete. Humans have successfully survived, hunted for sustenance, and neutralized competitive predators using only materials available within the preserve environment. David and Maria joined her, the 3 humans standing confidently in the middle of what had been the most dangerous hunting preserve in the hegemony's territory. Around them, the evidence of their success was undeniable. Successful hunting, sophisticated tool creation, tactical domination of apex predators, and complete environmental adaptation in less than 30 hours. The communication systems in the observation platforms crackled to life as alien representatives began reporting to their home governments. Word of what they had witnessed would spread across the galaxy within hours. Counselor Threeks activated his platform's direct communication system. Humans, his voice echoed across the preserve. The challenge has been completed. Your demonstration has been adequate. Elena smiled up at the platforms. Adequate was probably the closest thing to overwhelming praise they were likely to get from a warrior species like the hegemony. "Counselor Threeks," she replied. "Does this demonstration satisfy the Council's requirements for proof of human apex predator status?" The pause that followed stretched for nearly a minute as Threeks consulted with the other Council representatives via quantum communications. When he finally responded, his tone carried a respect that had been absent at the beginning of their trial. "Ambassador Chen will be informed that the Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding human membership status. The hegemony will sponsor humanity's immediate elevation to full Council membership, as promised." Elena nodded professionally. "We appreciate the Council's fair evaluation of our species' capabilities." As extraction platforms descended to retrieve the three humans, alien observers across dozens of species began updating their databases on human capabilities. The creatures they had dismissed as physically unremarkable had just demonstrated tactical and psychological dominance over apex predators in a controlled environment. More importantly, they had done it with an efficiency and professionalism that suggested this was routine for their species. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Sarah Chen received the notification of their success with quiet satisfaction. The Council session that would grant humanity full membership was already being scheduled, and the unanimous nature of the decision was unprecedented in Council history. Marcus leaned over to read the detailed report of the preserved trial. 5 Shadow Maws eliminated, 2 captured alive, 0 human casualties, complete mission success in less than 30 hours. He shook his head in amazement. Those 3 just redefined apex predator for the entire galaxy. Sarah smiled as she watched the news feeds that were already spreading across the galactic communication networks. Video footage of Elena calmly placing her hand on a surrendered Shadow Maw was being broadcast to trillions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. "The aliens wanted proof that humans were apex predators," she said quietly. "I think they got it." Within 72 hours, human had become synonymous with apex predator in xenobiological databases across the galaxy. The 3 volunteers had not just proven humanity's status, they had established humans as the standard against which all other apex predators would be measured. The galaxy had asked for proof. They had received a demonstration that would be studied and discussed for generations to come. And somewhere in the archives of the Galactic Council, the official record of humanity's membership evaluation contained a single notation that would become legendary among military strategists across the galaxy. Assessment complete. Human apex predator status confirmed through demonstration of tactical superiority, psychological dominance, and species-level coordination capabilities that exceed all previously recorded standards. Recommend immediate full membership and diplomatic priority status for future negotiations. The humans had not just passed their test. They had rewritten the definition of what it meant to be an apex predator in a galaxy that thought it understood predation. The aliens had wanted proof, and they had received an education that would change how they viewed Earth species forever.